YouTubers, this is Jay from ArtAlienTV. Another quick game of interplanetary ice pipe going on here, back to Mars, back to Gale Crater, and we are looking at this set of images from 2016. These are going back a good 4 years now, a bit over 4 years actually. And the images to go for are these here. There's about 13 of these, or so, 12 or 13, the brownish ones. What I'll do, I'll put the page link in the description for you, as well as the individual links for each image, so you can check through all of these, because there's some weird and strange, interesting things lying on the ground in Gale Crater, as usual. Now, some of these things may just be rocks, like this thing here and this thing here, but I'm not really sure about that yet. I haven't looked at it properly. There's this thing, which is a skull. It's a fossilized skull, encrusted in mud and crap, and then fossilized and hardened. You've got a row of teeth here. If you can see the teeth, let's point them out to you. Let's go in a bit closer. It's a very odd shape, but as I've shown before, a lot of these skulls on Mars are very odd shapes. If this was a human skull, it would probably be this sort of shape, but it's not a human skull, okay, because it's not on Earth. Eye socket here, nose here, and a row of teeth here. Now this is highly irregular in shape. It's badly damaged. There is what seems to be clay and crap kind of solidified into some of these cavities here, like this eye socket. So this eye socket would have come out like this, I would imagine, like this one has. That sort of shape to it. A large nose socket there, or cavity. Now, this is the sort of thing that would have got overlooked completely if it wasn't for that row of teeth. And you can see it even in the raw clip. There's a row of teeth there, but you've really got to look at these closely to actually even notice these fine details. And it's usually the teeth that give it away for me. If I see a row of teeth like that on a supposed rock, then it probably isn't a rock. It's probably some kind of fossil or skull or something like that, okay? So that one wasn't particularly clear or defined because it's such an odd shape. Like I said, it's very elongated. I mean, look at the length of this thing. But some of the things I've found are very long indeed. Some of them are like come right up like this. Massive elongated skulls, some of them. This one seems to be damaged. Perhaps this came up further like this, and this is kind of eroded away or broken. Hard to say either way. Or this actually could be smaller. It could only be this big, and this could be clay that's stuck to it and hardened in the base of Gale Crater here, where there's lots of weird sticky clay and soil. Okay. There's also this thing. Now, I've showed this before, but this is a really odd one because we have what looks like a head with a hat or some kind of a helmet, weird sort of helmet. You can even see it in the raw image there. It almost looks like a face hugger on top from the Alien film. But what I'm seeing here is a skull here, or head, an eye here. There's another eye there. There's a nose here. There's a mouth with some teeth. Bottom lip there. And this hat or helmet comes round like that to the back. Comes up like that. On top it's got a sort of quite a straight part. And we've got these interesting parts curving round. Very odd indeed. I'm not really sure what to make of it, to be honest. And we've got what look like parts to it here, almost mechanical looking or almost spine looking parts. So who knows what that is. Let's go back a bit, because if you get too close it gets a bit blurry, as most of these things do on Mars. We've also got what looks like a little head in front of it. Now this may be a figurine. See the eye sockets here. Nose and mouth here. And the possible helmet or something on it as well. Now, could these be toys? Yes. Could they be carvings? Yes. Could they be actual preserved heads? Yes. Could they be just rocks? Yes. But really, look at this. This detail on here, to me, in itself, even if this is not a skull or head here, which I think it is, then what's this on top of it? So I really can't see how you can dismiss these easily, because not only do we have this with the strange helmet or headgear, it comes up like that. It's really odd, and it comes over the back there like that with a point. The outline of it is really, really interesting. So is this a carving? Possibly. Is it actually a preserved head of a Martian? Possibly. Hard to say either way, really. Not quite enough detail to say with any assurance, really. As with a lot of these things, the images aren't really good enough quality. I would say this is definitely a fossilised skull, this one here. But this could actually be a carving. But it may not be. This almost definitely is not a rock. But this is the age-old question. The problem is when we have fairly low-quality images like this from the rover, and these things are a bit of a distance away and quite small, then they're down to interpretation, really. But I mean, that was pretty clear to me. That one is really, really interesting. And you can even see a bluish like eye just here. Now, many of the Martians have got blue eyes. This part of it is blue. It's dark blue. It's getting close. It's got a bluish tint. Now, can we really trust the colours? Well, yeah, to a certain extent. Once you remove the brown filter, just colour correct the image and you'll see it. So that was interesting. And then there was this thing. Now, this is what I called the dog of war. Now, I probably showed this a year or two ago, a couple of years ago in a video, but only briefly. But I thought I'd come back to it because there's a few other things in the area, and I've only really shown a couple of them. I thought I'd go back over the whole area and show you some of the other things. So there we have it. Now you can even see this pretty clearly in the actual raw image here, and we've got what looks to be a carved head, but it may not be. And now here's the snout and nose area. Here's the chin. Now this is completely sheared off here. It's cracked and broken, so I would imagine this would have come to here or something. I don't know. And there may have been ears on this. Who knows? But this looks to me like a war dog or something similar. Now it may not be a dog, of course, but other dogs have been found. We have a nose here. We have jagged, pointed teeth here. We have a crack coming down here, so this thing is either a carving that's cracked, or it's somehow a fossilised and mineralised skull that's turned to stone, like some of the other specimens in the area, because it was at the bottom of a very, very salty lake, perhaps. This was a very salty lake in the area, full of bicarbonate minerals. A lot of these things could have literally been crystallised and preserved. So we may be seeing a type of crystallisation here, which is not your standard fossilisation like you get on Earth. So go back and watch the Mars Bear video I did recently to find out more about that if you want to see that. But yeah, let's crack on with it. We've got the nose here. Let's go in a bit close. We've got nose detail here. What seems like a nostril, and it's a bit hard to say, but that's a nose. The teeth are pretty obvious, I would say, and you can even see them in the raw image, as I'm going to show you in a sec. There's the eye. There's the upper part of the eye, lower part of the eye, and we have pupil detail here. Now, is it possible that, and we got this rather nice shape to it that comes back like that, and the chin there. Now, is this part of an ear here sticking out, and here? These are broken, it looks like. So these may have come up like this. Perhaps. I don't know exactly. I'm kind of trying to work out what sort of morphology this thing had and what type of dog or creature it might be. Now, look at the raw image. And you can see those teeth quite clearly, a row of teeth there. 1, 2, 3. There's a couple of nice big pointy ones there. And you can see that nose, that looks like a nostril, and the nose sticking up there like that. And you can see the eye. If you let your eyes adjust, you may need to tilt your screen a bit like I'm doing now, just to get the light just right, and you can see that eye just there. I haven't added the eye, it's already there. So these details are already in the images. I'm just bringing them out for you so people can see them on the mobile devices. A lot of people, like myself, when I go out with my phone, I have the brightness turned right down just to save battery, you know. So you've really got to exaggerate the brightness on these to actually see them properly, a lot of these things, because of course they're in this mucky brown colour. So there's those three. I'm just going to show you a couple of other things in the folder, and I'm going to show you some interesting articles that I've dug up about dogs and their use in warfare. Now, I have mentioned one or two of these things before, but there are some other things in here that I was looking at near this this strange dude here with the helmet or weird headgear on. There was this. Now, this to me looks like either part of a petrified creature or a piece of wood, crystallized and preserved here. Now, there isn't a great deal of detail to be had. It may even be something else, I don't know. But I thought it looked interesting. It's got this rather complex, organic looking structure to it, it seems. So that may be, or maybe not, who knows. I'll put clips of all these in at the end like I normally do. I'm not really sure about this, I haven't enhanced it yet. But this thing here looks a bit like a skull here. But I can't really work out what's going on. It may not be, but there seems to be eye sockets or something going on with that. And this rock here, this triangular looking thing, looks like a piece of something. And there seems to be something interesting next to it here. Don't know if you can see that. So who knows what that is. So I'll try and enhance that and see if we can drag some more detail out of it. I'll show you the little GIGAPAN I've done. It's not a huge one. There's only about 8 images or something in here. And you've got the dog right near the center here, and it's probably the largest object in the area, or one of them. We've got that very elongated skull here, just here. And then over to the right, in the next, you go a couple of images over, and we've got this dog of war here. You can see those teeth. Now, all I've done to this is colour correct it and brighten it. So that's all you've got to do. And it's really, really quite easy to see those teeth there. So if you see lines of teeth and you see eyes and animal or human-like or humanoid-like morphology, then it may well be a skull or carving. Now the question is this a skull that's cracked and broken, turned to stone and crystallized and turned to stone, or is it a carving? Now, if I was an artist, would I really carve that much jagged detail into the teeth? Probably not. I am an artist. But I mean, if I was a Mars artist, would I bother with that? Would I make the teeth more uniform and easy to carve? This looks interesting. I didn't notice that before. What is that? That could be another one. Another creature. There are lots of these creatures all over the place. Once you realise how weird some of them are, you can actually pick them out. You've really got to throw away a lot of your preconceptions about what animals and people would have looked like, because obviously on other planets they could have been very extreme, especially on planets with a much lower gravity like Mars, which is only 37 or 38% of ours. They could have had very extreme kind of morphology, much larger skulls. Some of them could have been giants. I have found evidence of giants and very, very small people on Mars, and all sizes in between. And you can see all those in my playlist, my skull playlist and alien playlists on my channel. There are hundreds of these things now. A lot of them are carved, but a lot of them aren't. Some of them it's very hard to tell. I would say this is probably carved. I don't know. Either way, why would it crack and split like this if it wasn't? But of course, it could have mineralized and turned to stone over millions of years, especially with these bicarbonate minerals and salts in the soil and sand here, which would preserve things extremely well and crystallize them eventually. Although actually, as I said in the bear video recently, that some of these things may have been preserved extremely rapidly and would have crystallized within days, and if the climate changed very rapidly like it probably did, then they would have frozen as well at the same time. I'll just show you some of the other dogs that I found. Here's a dog skull that I found 2016, very close to where we are now. So the word dogs, or at least dog-like creatures, they may not have been dogs exactly like ours. But look at the nose cavity there, nasal cavity, very similar to this. You have teeth that are broken off a bit here. We don't have the long canine teeth here, but I imagine there were. And we even have similar morphology around the eye socket and the shape of the head here. And we've even got this line coming down here, like you have here, across the forehead towards the nose here. So it's got very similar details. But there do seem to have been bear-like creatures as well in the area, quite small bears, and they do have quite similar attributes as well, but are much more robust and bigger usually. But they are part of the same family. There was this little one. Now, this may not be, this could be some kind of optical trick, but could this be a calcified animal or something? Now, this is raw from a GIGAPAN, I think by Neville Thompson, and I can't remember what soul number this is. It will say in the description, but I've got a feeling it's not far from where we are today. And this is really quite small. This is only like about 4 inches or 5 inches on the edge of a ridge. And even in the raw clip, you can see it looks like a little dog, but it's not a war dog. It's more like a chihuahua or something, or some kind of small little thing. But of course, it could be an optical trick. It could be some coral or just some rock that's kind of got these parts to it that look a bit like a dog. It's too vague, really, and too far away and too small to be sure. So there was that one, but it does look like a little dog. And there was this. Now, this is a really early video I did. I think I initially did this in 2014. This is a remake of it, or a re-upload. And this looks like an actual dog skull here with a corpse, which is all kind of semi-frozen and preserved. So, not very big, but also not very clear, this one, unfortunately. And it looks similar to the Mutant monster, which is actually a hairless raccoon corpse. So we got these jagged teeth like the one we're looking at today. See the jagged teeth there? But the body posture does look similar to that one I just showed you. Let's go back a little bit. The body posture, the death posture is very similar, but we have missing limbs. But most of the remains that I found on Mars do have missing limbs, as if they were torn off and taken away. There we are. So that's what we call a death posture. Okay. Now, when you see sculptures and carvings, they don't have death postures usually. They're usually in an upright and alive-looking posture, or sitting like that little dog. That looks like probably a carving would look in a sitting position, because it's pretty unlikely that a dog would actually freeze to death and be preserved sitting up like that. It would either fall over or flatten out on the ground. So there are ways of telling whether these things are carved or not, but sometimes when you've got lower quality images like some of these here, you can't really tell. Some of these are very high quality images, and you can see the detail really well when you look up close. So you can tell that they're carved. This one is blatantly a skull here. This even got eyeballs, and a nice row of teeth. But when you have slightly ambiguous images, like we got today, some of them, not this one so much, but this one, not really sure about, but the row of teeth to me say to me that this probably is a skull, because you simply wouldn't get a uniform row of teeth like that and a nose cavity and eye sockets in that configuration otherwise. But I'm not entirely sure. It looks like there's clay and crap stuck inside some of it, so it's obscuring some of the detail. let me show you those, quickly show you those articles that I've got up here. There was a picture here of a dog wearing armour. I thought that was interesting. Ancient cultures always used dogs in warfare, and we still do now. They don't tend to wear this type of armour now. They wear a different type of armour. But armour they wear. And there's these interesting pictures from World War I think. The Airedale Terriers were taught to use gas masks as part of their military service. Imagine that. Unbelievable. It looks crazy. I just thought that was an incredible image. An old black and white photo from the First World War, I think. This is about a guy who's carved, or a bunch of people who carved a memorial to the war dogs of World War I in the UK. The Airedale Terriers, and you can see the big massive lump of granite they've got here, and they're kind of machining it and cutting parts off. There's a bit of an optical trick here, because actually this guy's right near the camera, but this thing in the background is actually really large. And they're sort of carving it out and making a memorial to these soldiers and dogs of war from World War I. Really interesting. So I'll put a link to that. That was interesting. Interesting images. I'll also put a link to this as well. Now, I did mention this in one or two other videos I did years ago, I think, and this is about the Russian war dogs of World War II. In the 1930s, they basically trained a lot of these dogs to blow up tanks. And what they used to do is they used to put the food under the tank, and keep the dogs hungry, and the dogs always thought there was food underneath the tank. So what they do, they strap an explosive device to the dog, and then the dog would go under the tank, and then they would explode the device remotely from a remote control, a radio control device, okay? Or perhaps they even had them on wires, I don't know, but they probably used radio technology for that. Pretty basic stuff. Of course, the problem being that when the Germans came along to the Russian front, the dogs didn't really know the difference between the German tanks and the Russian tanks. So often they would run under the Russian tanks instead of the German ones and blow their own tanks up instead of the enemy tanks, because they didn't really know the difference, even though they do look different. This was an interesting article. I'll let you read this. It goes into some pretty gruesome details about how they trained them and how these were used in the war in the 1940s in Europe, and how they were deployed and trained, and even got diagrams of the devices they carried. So, wow, it says here, the Soviets later reported that some 300 tanks had been destroyed by anti-tank dogs. But many questioned this number, thinking it was probably made up by the Soviet government who wanted to justify the program. Who knows, it could have been. I would say it probably is a bit less than that, I would say, but who's to say? I wasn't there. So, very interesting stuff. So, the dogs of war is this thing we're looking at today, a war dog. It does look very much like one of these. If you imagine this with the back of it cracked off, or this dog here, in fact it has quite small ears, so maybe it only had small ears. So perhaps what we're looking at is a war dog. You know, the ancient Romans used war dogs, but most cultures do. Now, perhaps this was an ear, perhaps that is the head, and there's a bit of an ear sticking up there, and this is an ear. So it could have had quite small ears. Not all dogs have big ears. So we don't really know, because there's damage to it, so who's to say? But interesting either way. Mainly because of this row of teeth and the nose and the eye here, I thought that was interesting. I thought that was pretty cool. So thanks for watching, everybody. Do check out my other videos. I'll put links to these as well at the end. Actually, what I'll do is put a little doll playlist together for you, and I'll stick it in at the end of the video, and you can just click straight onto that if you want, and check these other things out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.